Today we'll be learning something about what is called CVP analysis. What is this particular CVP analysis is all about? The CVP analysis gives us an understanding about the relationship that exists between the cost, sales volume and the profitability. If you know this particular relationship only, we'll be in a position to take major decisions concerning our organization. We'll be able to understand which products should be added, which products should be dropped, which set of the products should be accepted, whether I should produce A product, B product or C product, whether I should produce only A product or B product, how much quantity of B product should be produced, how much quantity of B product should be produced, whether I should produce C at all or should I buy from outside. We'll be able to understand by understanding this particular CVP analysis. Apart from this particular things, what should be the price of the product? We can decide by understanding this particular CVP analysis. What will be the break-even sales volume for the organization given the sales price and the variable cost? By understanding the break-even point, we'll be able to understand how much we should produce in the organization. We will also be able to understand something called the margin of safety. That is nothing but with what cushion we are working in the organization at present. Whether we are producing more than the break-even point or we are producing less than the break-even point, we'll be able to understand by calculating what is called margin of safety point. Should we accept a new order? Should we not accept a new order? Given the sales price, given the variable costs, these particular decisions can only be done only when you understand this particular CVP analysis. Before going to this particular CVP analysis, one has to understand that every organization spends something towards various costs. They are going to spend many things whenever they are producing something. These particular expenditures can be divided into two different things. They can be segregated into two things. One, fixed cost. Second thing is variable costs. What are these particular fixed costs and what are these particular variable costs? We need to understand them clearly, and not only that, we need to understand the behavior of this particular fixed cost and also understand the behavior of this particular variable cost. This fixed cost, for example, the examples of this particular fixed costs are the rentals, the salaries that we need to pay to the employees. These particular fixed costs, these are called fixed costs. They don't vary with the size of the production. Whether you are producing 0 units, whether you are producing 1000 units, whether you are producing 3000 units or 5000 units, what you are going to pay towards the rent will be same. How much you are going to pay as a salary remains constant. These particular expenditures will not vary with the size of the production. These kind of expenditures are called the fixed costs. There are other set of costs which vary directly with the size of the production. These, for example, you might be buying some material for producing something. You are going to pay some laborer some wages to produce something. These particular wages, these particular costs towards the materials will not be there if you are not producing anything. Only when you are producing something, these particular costs are going to be incurred. These particular expenditures will go up or come down with respect to, in relation to the size of the sales. If the sales are 0 and the production is 0, you are not going to spend anything on the variable costs. But if your sales go up, you will be spending more. So, given this particular fixed cost, given the understanding, given given the fixed costs and given the variable costs and their behaviors. Now the question is, should we include the fixed costs for decision making? Should we not include the fixed costs while making some decisions? This will be understanding if you observe the example which I am taking now. Let us understand the two different concepts of costing and how the income statements are made by using these particular two different techniques. One is called absorption costing technique, another one is called the margin costing technique. When you are using the absorption costing technique and trying to prepare the income statements, we are going to include both the variable costs and fixed costs in the product cost, and try to, when you are preparing the income statement, we are going to include both the variable and fixed costs and try to find out what is called the cost per unit. Let us look at this particular example. This particular example is relating to a sofa manufacturer who is producing the furniture for the offices and the householders, and this particular income statement is coming out by using the absorption costing before the lockdown has come because of the COVID-19. When the lockdown was there, partially, and when the lockdown was full. In the month of February, when there is no lockdown, when the corona was not rampant, when the lockdown was not announced, before the lockdown, he could produce 10 units and the sales value is 1 lakh rupees. From this particular thing, he has deducted the variable cost and the fixed cost, direct costs relating to the direct costs of production, which are related both to variable costs and also the fixed costs. So he has included both variable components and fixed components and deducted both to arrive at what is known as the gross profit. After that, he has deducted indirect costs relating to sales, general and administrative costs, and he has included both variable and components and also fixed components here also to arrive at this net profit. He got a net profit of 20,000 in the month of February. But in the month of March, the net profit was 11,000. He has used the same method. But he could not produce 10 units because of the partial lockdown. He could produce only 7 units. Because of that, the sales revenue has dropped to 70,000. And the cost of production was 39,500. And because of the other costs, his net profit has dropped down to 11,000 rupees. In the month of April, he could not produce anything because of the full lockdown. His factory could not run anything. He could not produce anything, and because of the fixed costs, he is incurring a loss which is equivalent to 40,000. Now, if you observe this particular thing, the total cost in the month of February is 80,000. 80,000 divided by 10 units gives us the cost per unit, 8,000 rupees. In the month of March, the cost of production was 9,740. Here, in the month of February, when he has produced 10 units, the cost of production was 8,000. In the month of March, the cost of production has increased because the production size has come down. Now, on the basis of this particular cost of production, should we price the consumer? Shall I absorb this particular extra cost of production from the price which I am going to take it from the customer? It is not possible for us to absorb this particular increased cost from the customer. So it is better not to include this particular fixed cost and decide whether to produce 9,000 rupees, whether to produce a particular product at 10,000 rupees. The selling price will be decided by the market. Just because of your inefficiency, you cannot price higher, and the people will not be interested in buying from you just because you are producing a product with inefficiency. In the month of April, what happened? We have incurred a loss of 40,000 rupees. Now, this particular 40,000, should I recover from the products which I am producing in the month of May? It is not possible. The organization itself has to incur this particular loss, absorb by itself, because these are the period costs. If they are nothing but they are not product costs. But if you are using this absorption costing, decisions are going to be go wrong because we are including this particular fixed cost into consideration. That is the reason the concept of the margin costing has come in. If you are preparing the income statement as per the margin costing technique, what we are doing is here, from the sales we are reducing the variable cost. The variable costs relating to the manufacturing, selling and general and administrative costs, we are deducting it to get what is known as contribution margin. The contribution margin is considered to be much more important tool for decision making rather than the gross profit, nor the net profit or the cost of production. Here we are bothered to find out what is marginal cost, what is contribution margin. From this particular contribution margin, we are going to deduct the fixed costs, though direct or indirect. We'll be interested in deducting this cost after finding out the contribution margin. The contribution margin plays a vital role in decision making. Whether my contribution is, whether there is a contribution, whether the sales are giving me anything or not, is what is important for the organization rather than the profit. If I don't produce anything, anyhow I am going to incur this particular 40,000 rupees. By doing business, at least I am making 20,000 rupees. If I don't sell anything, what happens? This particular 40,000 is going to be losses. I am going to make a loss equivalent to 40,000 because of fixed costs. Just because I have sales, just because I have a contribution margin which is over and above this particular fixed cost, I am able to make some profits. Here, let us see what are happening in the month of March. Here also, my contribution margin is 42,000, whereas my fixed costs are 40,000 rupees. Now, I am still making 2,000 as a profit. Now, what is important here is the contribution rather than the net profit for decision making. If you see the contribution margin here in the month of February and in the month of March, it is one and the same, 6,000 rupees per unit. Per unit contribution margin will not be increasing or decreasing unless until there is a difference in the selling price we are selling in different months. As long as the selling price and the variable cost remains constant in two different periods, the contribution margin per unit is going to remain constant. This contribution margin per unit should be taken, is given more relevance, more importance for decision making. So, what is this particular margin costing I am talking about? Margin costing is a costing technique wherein the margin cost, that is variable cost, is charged to the units of cost while the fixed cost per a period is completely written off against the contribution. As I said, fixed costs are considered to be period costs. We are not going to absorb them. We are not going to consider them for decision making at all. Here in the case of margin costing. But in the absorption costing, just because he has taken all the costs, in the operations or the processes or the products, it is giving a wrong picture to us while making decisions. That's why we don't consider absorption costing at all while making some decisions. This fallacy what is this particular fallacy which is happening? Just because fixed costs are included in the cost per unit varies from one period to the other. That is the reason actually we cannot use cost of production, cost per unit as a yardstick for decision making. Thus, unit costs becomes incomparable between two periods. To avoid this, it is necessary to eliminate fixed costs from the derivation of the total costs. Thus, this has resulted in the concept of what is called the marginal costing. This marginal costing has given out one simple equation which is called marginal costing equation. What this particular marginal costing equation says? The marginal costing equation is nothing but sales minus variable cost is equal to fixed cost plus profit. The sales minus variable cost is fixed cost plus profit. This particular fixed cost plus profit is nothing but contribution. S minus V is equal to contribution, or fixed cost plus profit is equal to contribution. Contribution minus fixed cost is going to be the profit. This is a very, very simple equation wherein if you don't know one component, we'll be able to find out the other component. This particular equation also helps us in understanding something about break-even point, the PV ratio and margin of safety. The extension of the marginal costing equation helps us in understanding the relationship that exists between the sales cost and the profit. There are 2 or 3 important concepts we need to understand while studying this particular CVP analysis. One of the important concept is what is known as the PV ratio. This is also called C by S ratio. This ratio speaks about the relationship that exists between the contribution and the sales. How much funds are left towards fixed costs and the profit we'll be able to understand by knowing this particular PV ratio, S minus V by S. PV ratio by formula is nothing but S minus V by S. S minus V is nothing but contribution. Contribution by sales gives us what is known as PV ratio. How much contribution we are going to make out will have when I'm going to make a particular sale. If this is 10 rupees, S is 10 rupees and variable cost per unit is 5 rupees, and this gives me 50%. 10 minus 5 divided by 10 is nothing but 50%. If I am going to have a variable cost of only 4 rupees, this gives me 60%. If the variable cost is 7 rupees, it becomes 30%. So the contribution per by sales gives me a proper information about what is that I'm left with by producing something. I'll be able to understand by understanding this particular PV ratio, or it is also called as C by S ratio. This particular PV ratio can also be found out by using a formula which is nothing but change in profits divided by change in sales, the break-even point. Before going into that particular thing, let me give you something about what is this particular break-even point. The break-even point is the level of sales at which the contribution margin just covers fixed cost and consequently net operating income is equal to 0. In simple, the break-even point is a point where this S minus V is just equal to fixed cost. That is, we are not left with any profit. It is a point of sales wherein this organization is not going to make any profit, nor it is going to make any losses. That is what is called the break-even point. Every organization or every management will be interested in understanding what this particular break-even, what is my break-even point, so that he will be interested in increasing the sales to sales which is much more higher than this particular break-even point. Otherwise, he will not be getting any profit, but he will be into losses. Because of that, he will be interested in understanding this particular break-even point. He will be interested in calculating this particular break-even point. Let us first see the graphically how this particular break-even point can be arrived at. As you all know, all know that fixed cost remains constant irrespective of the size of the production. So, whether you are going to produce something, whether you are not going to produce something, you are going to spend this particular fixed cost. But with regard to the variable costs will increase with the size of the production. As if I am going to increase my size of the production, the variable costs also will be moving up in tandem with the sales line. Now, if you are going to combine this particular thing, we get what is known as total cost curve. And the total cost curve is going to start here because the fixed costs are going to be there. Even when you are not producing anything, the variable fixed costs are going to be borne. So the total cost line will start here, will move like this, which includes both the fixed cost plus the variable cost. Now, with regard to the sales, the total sales curve, when you are not producing anything actually, the curve starts here and moves up like this. Now, the difference between the total sales and the total cost gives us the position with regard to whether we are making profits, whether we are going to make losses. If you are going to depict both the curves actually, that is, if the sales curve is going to be like this and the total cost curve is going to be like this, until this particular point of the sales, you will not be making any profit because our total costs are much more higher than the total sales. Because of that, until 4,000 units, as shown in this particular graph, this particular organization will not be making any profit. Beyond this particular point, what happens is the total sales value is much more higher than the total cost. Because of that, you will start making profits. So the profitability increases whenever you are producing more and more. And at this particular point of 4,000, you are not making any profit nor loss. This is the point which we call as the break-even point. Now, if you wanted to calculate figuratively with the formula, the break-even point, what we have said is that the sales minus variable cost, if it is equivalent to the fixed cost and if you are not left with any profit, that is the point which we call it as a break-even point. So the break-even point in units is nothing but fixed cost divided by sales price per unit minus variable cost per unit. Supposing that the fixed costs are 1,000 rupees, my selling price is 10 rupees and the variable costs are 5 rupees. So I am left with a 5 rupees as a contribution margin here per unit, and 1,000 divided by 5 rupees gives us the number of units I need to produce to get into the break-even point. Supposing that I wanted not the number of units, but I wanted to understand the value of the break-even point, that is break-even sales point in terms of the sales value, then we are going to use the formula wherein I am going to multiply with this particular formula with sales per unit. Then, as you know already, we have discussed sales price per unit minus variable cost per unit divided by the sales per unit is nothing but the PV ratio. Here, fixed cost divided by sales price per unit minus variable cost per unit into sales per unit is nothing but the formula to calculate this particular thing. So what I am going to do is I am going to take this particular thing with the numerator. That is nothing. The whole thing is nothing but the PV ratio. Then the fixed cost divided by PV ratio gives us the value, which is nothing but the break-even point in sales value. Now, after understanding this particular concept, we also need to understand something about what is called margin of safety. The margin of safety will be in a position to find out only when you know the break-even point. What is the margin of safety? Margin of safety is the amount of sales that are above the break-even point In other words, the margin of safety indicates the amount by which the company sales could decrease before the company will have no profit. So, the margin of safety is the number of units minus the break-even point. That is, if the actual sales are 60,000 and the break-even unit, the actual sales are 60,000 rupees and the break-even sales is 50,000 rupees, the margin of safety is 10,000 rupees. So we should not produce below the break-even, but we will always be interested in producing more than the break-even point. And apart from this particular things, we should have a large gap between this particular actual sales and the break-even sales, so that the margin of safety is going to be more. This gives us the cushion with which we'll be working. Supposing that if always the environment changes, for example, suddenly the sales are going to come down, or if suddenly the selling price is going to come down, or if the variable costs are going to come down, or my actual sales value is going to come down. If you are already having a larger cushion in terms of the margin of safety, then any small aberration in the market forces which will affect the sales or the sales price or the variable cost will not affect me. That is the reason we always will be interested in understanding about this particular margin of safety. By formula, we will be able to understand about this particular margin of safety by removing the break-even sales from the actual sales. Thank you.